Okay, we come to an interesting session, which is a fireside chat, getting the attacker's perspective. For that, first I'd like to invite the moderator, 𝗕𝗲𝗄 𝗏𝑉𝑎𝑠UDEVAN, who is the threat management leader with IBM Security, India and South Asia. Can we welcome 𝗕𝗲𝗄 with big round of applause, please? To join 𝗕𝗲𝗄, we have Balaji Raghunathan, who is the Vice President Technology and Solution, Digital Experience with 𝗖𝗏𝗄 𝗏𝗏𝗄. Please welcome him also with big round of applause. Arunraja Karthick, Head of IT Infrastructure, Cloud, COE and Security, DTDC Express Limited. And we also have Babitha B P CISO with Catholic Syrian Bank. Please welcome her also with big round of applause. And on that note, all to you, 𝗕𝗲𝗄 sir, for your discussion.
On, right? Hi, good morning everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Fireside Chat, and welcome to all of you on behalf of IBM Security. And first of all, thank you so much for esteemed panelists for taking time from their busy schedule, and some of them have even traveled in the early morning to attend us, join us in the morning discussion, right? So I would like to give a very brief introduction about the context and the topic that we are going to cover today, about getting attackers' perspective, right? And we would like to keep this as an open, fluid discussion, and we are very keen to understand their perspective about why is it critical to get the attacker's perspective for enterprise security, right? To give a basic introduction or bringing into the context, if you look at most of the larger organizations are actually managing with the complex technological infrastructure, right, which is spreading across hybrid multi-cloud environments, and constantly being marred by continuous sophisticated attacks, right, targeting applications across on-prem, across multiple cloud environments, right. To bring a couple of statistics into perspective, it says that 67% of the organizations, now this has been disclosed by one of the recent studies, strongly believe that their external surface has been continuously expanding over the last couple of years, right? That poses a lot of threat. Second, this is a study that has been conducted recently by ESG, which is a very interesting number. 70% of the compromises, enterprise compromises, happened because of unknown asset or unmanaged asset, right? And bringing the third interesting point is that only 3% of the compromises happened because of vulnerabilities. So the focus actually shifts from managing the vulnerabilities to managing the assets. How much of visibility that we have across the assets, across organization, right? So that's when getting the visibility, the attacker's perspective or the external attack surface visibility becomes so critical for any organization, right? So we will focus our discussion around 3 areas. What are the priorities for an organization when it comes to getting visibility about the external attack surface, right? What are the challenges when you have to take this discussion up with your management, right? And how do you sell this internally to the organization, right? What are the incremental benefit that you get out of external attack surface management? With that context, I would like to share my first question, and I request all of you to share your perspective on this part, right? See, we all know that the external surface is increasing. It is becoming even more complex. Applications are getting exposed, right? From your point of view, because each of you come from different industries, I would like to request you to introduce yourself before you answer. Babitha comes from a banking environment, and Mr. Arun comes from logistics and manufacturing, and Mr. Balaji comes from technology. So we cover most of the industry verticals here, and the perspective will be definitely different. So I request to start with Babitha, asking what is your priorities now? How do you identify the right technology when it comes to attack surface management, right? And what is your process? What is the your critical areas that you will be looking for when you go for a decision making?
Thank you, Pradeep, for the question, and the topic is relevant for the time. And good morning to one and all. See, when it comes to add on to what Pradeep has told, in this current scenario, we are facing it has been statistically proven that every 11 seconds attacks are happening somewhere in this world. And if we see the amount lost by the company, in India itself, it is in billions. We cannot even imagine that. And that is why these topics regarding the cybersecurity is coming into the market, or everyone nowadays are discussing more on it. If we see, cybersecurity is there from long time. When IT is there, security is there. But none of us are concentrating more separately on that. And coming to the topic regarding the visibility, see, I can secure only what I know. That is a simple principle. So there comes the shadow IT. What I am not aware of, do I concentrate on that? And there comes the attackers. See, if a person wants to hack a bank, do you think he will simply come and do it? No. He will be trying to learn what is going on, what and all applications that particular bank is using, and it is a targeted kind of attack. Advanced person threat, that is what is happening when a bank or a big organization is being targeted. And now the supply chain is the biggest vulnerability or biggest problem which we are facing. Now we are coming up in the media every day, now and then, some kind of attack, and we are following the MITRE attack framework and all to see whether it is affecting our organization, whether that loophole is there in our organization. To see that, are we having the complete visibility of the organization? That's the first point or question which should rise in everyone's mind. That am I able to know which all assets are connecting to my network? If I am able to know that, and if I have the confidence in that, I think half the problem is solved. That visibility is still missing. Because when it comes to a bank, now we are working not only in bank, now we all are perimeterless. Earlier we were within the perimeter, so people like you can put some rules where when we say that only these kind of traffic can come to my environment. Now we are working from home. Now endpoints are our perimeters. We have to concentrate on the security aspect or what kind of traffic can originate from that endpoint. So visibility of that endpoint is more important than now the perimeter rules we are configuring in our firewall. Hope you people also agree to me. So most of the attacks which has happened, recently we have come across with one of the security organization also, the way the attack vectors were working. Even impersonation of when we are going for multi-factor authentication, the fraudsters are even impersonating the multi-factor authentication and getting into the system. And awareness is what is required. That is comes the visibility of the awareness in our employees. That is also part of visibility, isn't it? How aware are they? See, what and all can be used in my system? Are they aware of? What will be the consequence if I am downloading some mail or I am installing some applications and I am accessing through that endpoint to my organization's network? If that system is compromising, the entire organization can come to a standstill. Tomorrow he may not be in a position to receive a salary. Because the organization should exist, no? Then only we can pay the salary. We have to create the awareness to that level that employees should understand that it's responsibility of each and every one that what we are doing is known. That is the simple fact, that visibility of the employees, visibility of the IT assets, visibility of what traffic is moving in. If we have a fair good idea about it, I think about 60%. Now I moved to, because 10% of awareness also has come in, now I have put it to 25% I am safe. If a person knows something wrong has happened in the system, if he is reporting to the respective team, he is aware that there are some malicious activities going on, incident response comes in, isn't it? Then security professionals can act on it and we can detect it and stop it. again the visibility. So this is what is actually required for a secured communication and secured environment. Then how attackers will be thinking. We talk about social engineering. It's a mere social engineering. The problem is again awareness. People save the same password for our official email and Gmail, whatever be, and we don't have the habit of remembering it, all those things, because we're very busy, so save it. It is available in the sessions, isn't it? If a person's endpoint is compromised, ultimately they can take that password and password spraying can be done. Password dictionary is there, and in the morning Geeta was talking about quantum mechanics, where this will actually come. Within fraction of seconds, they can break the password. That is the level the world is moving. Technology advancement has its pros as well as cons. The investment from the perspective of attack is happening in the nationwide. It is not like a particular organization is investing on some security tools. So they can afford to this quantum mechanics and the huge volume or the resources which is being required for all these things is available with them. So we should be aware of that. That is what now we CISOs are thinking, like we have to think like an attacker. What are the possible ways an attacker can think to get into the system so that we can follow that path and see whether we have the mitigation plans in place to contain them. So that is the attack surface what we have to look into. And for that, next comes the vulnerability. Vulnerability also is a key, because why the log4j and the supply chain attack is also a whitelisted vulnerability, what we can say that the patch update. I have given some, it is the biggest headache which I say third-party management and third-party vulnerability, because we are giving permission for them, and once we give the permission, we are not looking into the traffic what is coming in from their end. So that entity is getting compromised. Again, our organization is the one who is going to lose it. So for each, and that is what we always say about the zero trust. Don't trust anyone. But banking industry is completely on the trust. But today I will say, don't trust. Don't trust, because I have to allow only those traffic which is known to me, isn't it? Otherwise, my organization will go on toss. So that is a zero trust. How to achieve the zero trust? It is not a single solution which will help us to achieve the zero trust. It is a multi-tier architecture, the processes, governance, all this comes into a picture where we go for a zero trust architecture. So then again, coming back to the threat vector, how we are able to assess the threat vector. Threat intel plays a big role in that. See, every day we are getting some IOC, somewhere some attack has happened, that IOCs will come, we will search in our environment, something has gone wrong, whether it is already there in our environment, then we have to take immediate actions. Threat intelligence is very important, but we have to integrate with our security tools. Otherwise, each and every time we are going and doing some IOC whitelisting or blacklisting of IPs and all, it is a tedious job. It is an ongoing basis we have to do. So we have to do a API integration or some kind of a single solution which can be integrated with the system, wherein the IOCs will be automatically fed to the feeds will be fed to the respective security tools. So that are some of the points which has come to my mind. Now I request others also to share.
So, getting the attacker's perspective. Okay. Thinking about that itself gives where we stand. When we speak about security, every one of us thinks that I have these things, these solutions, protect my data, I'm safe. Or I'm safe to one extent. When we speak about security, for several decades, our security was perimeter. Yes. And we have a very clear boundary in terms of working environment as well. But when we see today, or in last 2-3 years, boundaries have expanded due to various reasons, specifically due to the pandemic. And that's exposed us more than the perimeter. if we truly believe that my data is secured, I have a critical security tool system in place, which is going to protect me or protecting me already. And yeah, as usual, I used to say security is not a 100% business, but still 95%, 90% I have secured. Unless if you go and see in the outside of the world, does your data is really secured? That gives a $1 million question. Okay. People speak about dark web, deep web, lot of these kind of terminologies, where the entire world of attackers are sitting and discussing about every one of us. When I say every one of us, when Zomato data is compromised, predominantly my name, my number, everything is there in it. So someone else in the world discussing about me somewhere else, okay? How should I get to know that? Or do I know that my data is there in it? When I say my data, it can be my organization data also, okay? So if you ask me to speak about my experience, right? I'm like one another technical guy is thinking that my data is secure. I'm having all good technology in place, which will take care of my data and system. But that's where the reality hits you hard, right? Something of that sort happen. When we working on something else, something comes out. That's kind of scenario it is, okay? So when I was working with a partner for an NDA and other kind of stuff, revising the NDA, okay? It is not first time. I'm revising an NDA with a partner. So we were revisiting the vendor evaluation and accidentally came to know that guy was compromised a year back, okay? Sweetest of thing is he himself don't even know that he got compromised. His data was there on the dark web. They were selling that data for $16, okay? And so that was the time the data was tagged with the name DTDC banking information available for this. When we deep dive into this, DTDC was not compromised. But DTDC information a vendor carries, a partner carries, he got compromised and my data is sitting somewhere else in the world, which includes certain set of code set also, okay? That guy developed something, he have that repository of that in a GitHub, there is no proper security on the GitHub he carries, and the entire algorithm of my application sits somewhere else in the world. And I still believe I'm secured. My data is secure. See, this is where, when this discussion came, attacker's perspective, it given that interest to me. Okay, I should definitely discuss about this. Because what is that attackers normally look at? Okay, does the attacker is a guy who sits and tries something randomly? Yes. Does the attacker is looking at you to compromise you? Yes. Answer for both. But when a random attack happens, you are a victim. When a targeted attack, you are not just a victim, you are being invested by the attacker. He investing a lot of time, effort, money into you understanding what you are, what is your business, what kind of compromise I can do on you, what kind of tools that you are using, what technology you have will stop me to get into you. And then finally, if I compromise you, what is that I will get benefited? This amount of information every single target attack has, this details gets into. It can be a ransom, it can be a data compromise, it can be a data theft, okay? So DTDC kind of company which is serving 14,000 pin codes, you can imagine amount of customer information we would have. If my customer base can be compromised, which is like at least 25% of Indian personal data can be taken for the market easily, okay? Every third person or every fourth person in this room might have used DTDC courier either directly or indirectly through some way. So surely your information is sitting in somewhere else in my database. If that gets compromised, that's where the attacker's perspective of investment, okay? If that is happening, then I need to look at not just my perimeter. I need to look outside of my perimeter, which is what is there facing to the external world. Okay, it can be my external application, it can be my external engagement, it can be my all kind of external affairs. Okay, so that's where Babitha, I was like keenly looking at her. She was speaking about asset. Okay, so I take one statement from her and one statement from you. 3% of the assets are compromised by vulnerability. There is another statement from ESG. The data compromised, right? The number of asset data compromised, the visibility of compromised asset is less than a percentage. Less than a percentage. That is the worst case. And actual data compromised, which is not known, and the asset about that information is absolutely not coming to the. See, when you look into one compromise, when you know this asset is compromised, some data, either the asset is misbehaving or data is compromised. But actual in the dark web, the most of the data compromise is unknown to the victim. So we never look into the asset, right? So that's what used to happen in the past as well. When a system is compromised with a malware, we think I have CrowdStrike, I have Symantec antivirus, which has stopped that spread. But we never did a forensic on a single compromised machine, which means we do forensic on a mass event. When I have a ransom attack, mass event, we do a forensic. But when a single system have a malware or infection or phishing, we never do a forensic. I believe my system has now been either isolated, protected, or cleaned. I'm okay. But we never investigated how that system get compromised, even a single system. If we would have had that perspective, that is what going to change the way we operate. The current kind of the things are happening. Every single event, which we think, okay, single event, I have protected. By that time, already attackers have looked into you. Attackers know how you have stopped him. Now he will come back again with a different attempts. Okay, so that's where the perspective of an attacker and the technology from the external perspective is important for every organization to look at. That's my perspective.
Thank you. Yeah. Balaji, over to you, please.
Yeah, so coming to thinking like an attacker, right? I mean, so basically like there are three aspects when it comes to an attack, right? One is how vulnerable you are. Second is how accessible are your endpoints. Then third is essentially, what is the value of the asset you hold? Now again, going back to what Arun was talking about, you have two different types of attacks, right? One is just a kind of random scan, figuring out how vulnerable you are, what are the accessible points, and then getting access to the data. Second is the targeted attack. So here, basically the attacker knows what is the value of your asset, and then they actually plan backwards, right? I mean, looking at what are your vulnerable points, then coming to your accessible points, and then coming to getting the data. So this is how the attackers think. And I mean, what I've seen is like most of the top organizations, the way they handle the mind, I mean, how they try to think like an attacker is, as and when any system goes live, there is a dedicated phase for ethical hacking. So ethical hackers are the ones actually looking at, what are your vulnerable points and what are your accessible points, right? So that is the first aspect. The second aspect is about, you should know what data you're actually exposing and what is okay to be exposed, what is not okay to be exposed. So essentially from a strategy perspective, you're looking at, what is your potential competitor or your attacker interested in. So essentially that is where the processes come into place. So when we look at what I've seen as part of some of the best practices, one is like your asset classification or your data classification. categorize them into what can be shared, what cannot be shared, and then actually look at the strategy for protecting what cannot be shared. So for example, it could be encryption, or you can look at isolation of this, or you can look at sort of masking this. So basically you follow the strategy. Now the third aspect comes to despite taking all these measures, like Arun was saying, that my data, I think it is secure, but it may not really be secure, right? And also, it is a known fact that there are only 3 types of organizations, right? The ones who know that they have been hacked, and the second is ones who don't know who have been hacked. Now there are the third organizations also, which are the more dishonest organizations. They know that they have been hacked, but they claim that they have not been hacked, right? So that's how it is. So essentially, that's where the fourth aspect comes in. So that is where that incident's response comes in. So essentially, how fast can your, so despite securing everything, despite all the standard gates, despite all the processes you have put into place to protect an asset, how fast can you respond? So now for having that fast response, what should be your operating model? Who should be part of that operating model? So should it be just tools? Do you have the right tools? Should it be, which departments should be involved? How should you announce to the world? How should you announce to the regulators, right? So how should you be compliant? So these are how I actually see some of the leading organizations, think of securing their assets. So the first part is essentially looking at, what are your vulnerable points, which are the accessible points, and then looking at what is the value of the asset you hold. The second part is, coming to, your strategy. What do you want to expose? What you don't want to expose. Third comes to the actual implementation of the strategy. How do you want to protect what you don't want to expose? And the fourth is, despite all this, if I want something, if something happens, God forbid, then what should be my response? How do I optimize my response? So this is how I've seen, many of the leading organizations protect their data actually, or protect their assets.
Thank you so much, because the reason we wanted this perspective is ASM, or attack surface management, is a very loosely defined term, if you see, right? Every vendor has their own way of defining what is attack surface management is. It varies from asset management, then into brand monitoring, right, shadow IT monitoring. So we wanted to get this perspective from industry leaders who are operating 3 different major industries. And very interestingly, while Babitha covered about the visibility part of that, Arun covered up the detection part of it, and Balaji's covered the response part of it. So which is essentially covers the complete end-to-end process of an incident, right? From visibility, getting visibility, to detection, to response, right? Thank you once again for that perspective. So next question is to you, Babitha. So you represent one of the banks who are actually very fast paced in terms of digital adoption, right? Embarking on the cloud journey as well, right? And you are in one of the most tightly regulated industry is bank, right? For all good reasons, RBI is behind all the banks. I know you'll not like this statement, but yeah, it's good for good for the nation, good for all of us, right? RBI is putting controls after controls and tightening it, making sure that the infrastructure, which is one of the most critical infrastructure, is protected. It's expensive for the banks, but it's for the good of the general public. Now, I wanted to take your very specific perspective about when you look at external attack surface management, right? What will be your approach, right? As a bank, as a CISO of a bank which is actually investing heavily into the digital transformation journey. So we would like to take your perspective on your approaches. What will be your major approach towards that part?
Yeah, when it comes to management of the threats, what primarily we have to follow the secure by design. That is the basic thing that need to be followed, which is very difficult to. But I should thank RBI because being in the CISO role, because of them, my board members are always asking me question whether and whatever tools I am asking for, they are granting me, and I will put it as a regulatory requirement. So in a way, RBI is helping me out. So I cannot blame them. Then regarding this, so the thing is like the situation is going in such a direction, we all have to think that it is not like we are not attacked, we will get attacked. It is not, now we are not going to prevent the attacks. Now we are in the phase wherein how far we are able to detect it and stop it. That is the attitude which we have to hold in. Preventing is good, very good, because that is what is actually required. But the way the things are moving on, the zero-day attacks are not. We have to think in the way that we might get attacked, then how fast we are able to contain. So for that, we need the logs, isn't it? The activity monitoring. What is happening? For that, we have to integrate it into a SIEM, then SOAR, definitely for the orchestration. Here also the challenge comes in wherein we are loading the tools with lot of logs, which is also a big problem because all this has a cost involved in it, isn't it? We have to store the logs for, our regulators are asking for minimum 6 months, then hot 3 months, then 1 year, then it can go to 3 years, 5 years. And still the biggest thing is like they have never come up with a regulatory thing that this much year you have to log. That they will never say, because they themselves doesn't know how long it will, the logs need to be done. But ultimately the organization should take a role in that and come and say that, okay, we are going to have it, because it costs, storage definitely costs. So we have to come up with that. And when we are projecting to, and I don't say that we need all the tools for securing our environment. We should do it wisely. What I want to secure, which is my crown jewel. What threat is involved in? If we are not, for me, customers are there, mobile banking, internet banking. So I should be more secured because it is people, money is with me. If it is software company is there, I don't think this much is required because they have to concentrate more on the secure development life cycle, what is come, and concentrate more on that kind of things, and the minimum level of security is required for that. A web application firewall may not be required at their end because publicly no one is going to access their solution, isn't it? So that way, it doesn't mean like whatever solution is available in the market, if we purchase and keep it with us, if that's enough. That's not required actually. With minimal thing itself, I remember one day when I was giving a talk, someone asked me that my management cannot invest this much money and all, but we have some critical data. Then I told you the most secure system is not connected to the network. You keep it separately. That is the way you can do. So whenever we are going and appraising to the management, we should tell them what for it is, what benefit, because they know only the we can talk technology and technical jargons only, which they can't understand, and they know the language of money only. So there comes the problem. So when we are telling them, sir, this is what our board, appraising the board, we should say that this kind of attack has happened somewhere, and this problem is existing in our environment. If it comes to our place, this is the loss which our organization is going to have. And quantumizing that is a difficult task because brand reputation, how we quantumize, make it to the financial level, that also we have to work on. So our accounts department should help us for that. If this service is not available for this many hours, what is the impact or what business loss we are going to face. So based on that, we have to make it into some figures and put it across to the board, and then I'm for sure you will get that done. And next day onwards, they will ask you whether you have implemented it or not. So things, we have to tell them in their language, otherwise that's also visibility. They should get the visibility of what is going on. So visibility is very important everywhere actually. Then SIEM tool, we have to call, when coming about the logs, don't bombard with many things. just take the relevant data. When we are giving, just simply don't give the audit logs, everything into that. We have to contain to what is required. Then we have to have a threat intelligence things and a governance solution also, where we can, because we have lot many tools giving different things. We have to collate it to a single point where we can understand that which is the most critical asset, and we have to formulate some mitigation plan for that.
Thank you once again. And next question is to Arun, you. So you come from an organization which deal with a lot of data, sensitive, critical data, personal information, even my address, I'm sure, is there in your, so contact details, because he comes from DTDC, and all of you would have used DTDC service once in a while, and they have the data. And your priority from a security organization will not be the priority for the department who is funding the investment, right? It could, you will be going to the CFO. You will be talking about brand reputation, or you will be talking about protecting data. They will not be keen about, they will not understand that protecting data is important for the organization from a CFO point of view for a finance organization. So how do you deal with that kind of a situation? How do you convince the management to invest in a technology to protect the people data?
Interesting question, a perspective, right? So in my last discussion, right, what I was training, I came to know my data is somewhere in the world, not through me. So that's called a direction for me to deep dive into it, to see what else is there compromised from me. So that's where I started putting more focus into this, all the tool set which gives the attack surface monitoring or management from the perspective. Assessed more than 3-4 tool sets. Whether I'm going to buy it or not, when I started my perspective, even if I'm buying or not, at least from the POC, I should know this amount of data somewhere lying in this world. That's how it started, but then it gave a very bad perspective for me. Okay, then doing just a POC is not sufficient for me. Now I need to make an investment. We zeroed down to something, gone back to the board, and then the simple answer was, things are fine. Why do I invest on this? Somewhere things were on my side. Okay, when same thing was happening, there was another exploit happened with the name of DTDC. Someone else, DTDC is a franchisee organization, right? We have a lot of franchisees in the business. Someone else had a website in the name of DTDC. You pay us 14,000 rupees, 50,000 rupees. You take the DTDC franchisees business. Okay, people got been a victim into it. And then we came to know that some kind of scam happening on that note. Now the same question came back to me, how to stop this? Solution is same, okay? Attack surface monitoring is not just on your asset, it is on your brand. How people are impersonating your digital brand, okay? So I call it as a digital brand, okay? How people are misusing your digital brand, this also been protected through the attack surface monitoring, or at least I will have a visibility that who's misusing my name, my digital brand, and then I have an opportunity to stop it way behind someone else can make a misuse of that. Now, a digital brand misuse is an interesting area for an CFO and the management. More than the data is, data compromising, they are more sensitive, but unless if it is exposed to the world, no one is that sensitive. Like here, the fourth statement, right? Yeah, I know I got exposed, but I'm dishonest that I won't tell this to the external world because it is not exposed. So now what I get exposed is the brand reputation, okay? So brand reputation was one helping factor for me to get the board convinced that to invest on something. We are not like Babitha, right? She has a back from RBI, which is mandated to investment. For non-banking sectors, doesn't have that kind of flexibility. So we need to have such kind of parameters which will either have a brand value or a value which will bring down your revenue. Okay. If people come to know that DTDC customer data is exposed, my revenue is going to come down. Either or otherwise. This is one key way I used, I'm just counting me, that I could able to convince the management and board to invest on it. And again, this is a huge investment. Either an incident response or an attack surface management is not an investment which is going to pay you immediately or ever, but investment is mandatory. So that's how it is.
Thank you. Thanks, Arun. And here's the last question to Balaji. So you come from a technology organization and you deal with a lot of external customers, right? So my simple, straightforward question is that when it comes to security discussion, the base thing is having an SIEM platform, which is supposed to manage a lot of things, right? So how do you deal with your external customers when it comes to the incremental investment and benefit from these additional tools on top of that you are already invested on a platform? You have to get these new tools to get incremental perspective, right? Incremental visibility. So how are you going to deal with that when it comes to dealing with your external customers?
Yeah, so the first thing is essentially, if you look at what is the cost of a data breach, right? So the first part is like per record, today it is at $161 per record. And if you look at the cost of, average cost of a breach, that is about $4.86 million, I'm talking about in dollars. So that is the first driving factor, right? So now the second factor is like, okay, if you have quite a lot of records, now because of all this digital transformation initiatives, there is a lot of focus on what we call as a MAC architecture, microservices, API, cloud, headless. So essentially what this means is that, you're no more having isolated systems, you're having more and more external parties, more and more external ecosystems who's going to use the data, what was earlier secure. So now essentially like, so that's the driving factor. Now, if you have all this externally connected world, right? So what do you do, right? So the only thing you can do is two things. One is reduce your response time. Second is reduce your attack surface. So that's essentially your strategy. So that is where your tool strategy actually starts in. So what we tell them is like, okay, if you don't have anything, the first level is of course this SIEM, right? Security incident and event management tool. But here basically you just collect all the data from your logs. Basically you collect all the logs from your devices, your applications, your servers and all that. So essentially, but here once you reach that critical mass, it's going to be impossible for you to respond to each alerts. You don't know what alerts you have to respond to. You will just be flooded with quite a lot of events. So that's where you probably go to the next level, which is security orchestration and response, right? Like SOAR. So that is the second part. So that's where essentially you go to a more mature organization. You take data from third-party systems or third-party intelligence, threat intelligence systems, you enrich it. Then you see how that is actually applicable to you. Now you have probably attained the level of maturity. Now the third level is essentially that XDR. So this is where you actually look at taking all this data, centralizing all this data, and then planning your response in real time with all this threat intelligence. It may not be really real time, but essentially you can decide what you want to be real time, what you can respond a bit later. But essentially having that threat intelligence and bringing that user behavioral perspective, all this into one platform, that's where that investment case for a XDR comes into picture. So essentially it's just a matter of evolution, and it's also in parallel to your connectedness of your system, your architecture to the external world. So that's how I would look at advising the customers.
Sir, sorry for interruption. We need to end immediately.
Yes,
sir.
yes,
we overshot at a time quite.
Yeah, apologies for overshooting. So thank you so much for your perspective.